And I'd just like to thank the ocean for the last 50 years of fun. and say it's amazing how far the sport has progressed, especially in terms of equipment. That's just truly phenomenal. And this film helps us appreciate that. Thanks, Peter.
One of the real highlights of surfing for me was driving out to the North Shore with Sammy Lee, Kimo Hollinger, and Paul Gabauer, and they'd get into this pidgin English thing, Kippy and August, and it was really something because I'd be driving out and I'd be laughing so hard. I was not a good driver to begin with, and I didn't have real good eyes, but I'd be laughing so hard with those two. And maybe Kimo could say a few things about memories about Paul Gabauer, because he was a real classic. He is a classic. He's still around. I think he's up there in the crater somewhere up in Maui, but here's Kimo.
People know where to find me. When you're a fireman, they don't go to your house, they come to the fire station. And when Paul would come to Oahu from Maui, he'd come and see me at the fire station. I remember once he gave me a good jazz album. He was going to come here to see us, but he's under the care of a doctor in Maui, and he couldn't. The doctor wouldn't let him go to come here. His father was the head doctor at
the place near
Leahi Hospital. Yeah, his father, Dr. Gibara, yes, and Paul was just he was a real wit, and he didn't hold back. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm sure all of us here got angry at him at one time or another, but you know, here in Hawaii, we tease each other, but we love each other, you know, and I hope we can always keep it that way, where, you know, no one really gets hurt. Thank you.
Yeah. Speaking of Gabauer, I have a background of Gabauer. It's just unbelievable, but I used to have this kind of a kindergarten association truck that I used to have, and I had the mattress in the back, and I had this pink, and I got it from Fred Van Dyke for about $75. And I would drive to work at Punahou, and I drove to work at Punahou, you know, and I parked the car at Punahou right on the campus there by the swimming pool, and right in front of all the students and the faculty and the principals and everybody else. And I'd get out of my car with my shirt, button-down shirt, looking pretty proper and everything else. And then out of the back of the truck would come Pat Curran, Paul Gabauer. They had a little night out in Hawaii, you know, in Oahu, in Honolulu. And they decided they'd sleep in my car, you know. And they'd pile out. It was kind of embarrassing. But Pat Curran was another real classic, and he was one of very few words, but they were always good when he'd come up with these one-liners. He was sort of the Howley version of Buffalo. Buffalo's another one with real good one-liners. But that was a classic group of people in those days, and I really did enjoy surfing with these guys, and we had we spent a lot of time just talking and laughing in the lineup. We missed a lot of waves, but we had a lot of fun. One of the things I would like to do is we had a lineup. Pat Curran showed us a lineup at Waimea, which was to take the second tree up on the top of the hill and line it up with the top of the steeple, the church tower there that used to be a cement tower, but it was a tower there. We lined that up with a second tree, and it was a really good lineup. And I remember when I was in my 60s still surfing there, and I was out with Tom Curran, Pat's son, and I told Tommy, I said, you know, Pat had this lineup, and it really works well. And Tommy lined it up and actually was really stoked because it was a good lineup. It's a perfect lineup. And I was just wondering, because Gavin's been surfing Waimea a lot right now, and I'm wondering if they still use that same lineup, if they have a different lineup, or if they even have a lineup. They're so unbelievably good nowadays that I don't even know if they need a lineup, but maybe Gavin could tell us.
Yeah, Peter, I'm not sure about the exact spot on the hill, but I know that spot we were talking about, you know, to be really deep in the lineup at Waimea there, and it's not a very comfortable feeling when you're really deep at Waimea at all. For one, it's quite nerve-wracking, but you'll have the guys who know exactly what they're doing, and they don't move at all. They sit right where they know where the spot is, and they obviously have their lineup spots, just like you're saying, Peter. But I've gotten a couple good ones, but like you're saying, on lineup spots, 10 years ago, Jerry Lopez taught me the lineup spot at Pipeline, and he was the one who told me, hey, this is what your father taught me. And Jerry told me, hey, here's the boil. It makes a certain boil off the pipeline, and it comes out of the water, and you need to sit right behind the boil, and from that point, you're pretty much going to be right behind the peak. So those certain stories and those, you know, the things that the people who know what it's all about tell you where to go, and you better sit there and do it. And sure enough, I got one right behind the peak and got one of the most amazing rides of my life. And just like you're saying, it's good to hear those stories and put them in your head and make sure that that's where you want to sit, because it's proper and that's the way it should be.
Yeah. Through the years, surfing is really a lot of fun. Now, what I thought we could do is just have people in the audience ask questions of any one of us. We're all, you know, we've been around the water a long time. We all know a little bit about what the surf is all about and everything. We might be able to answer some of your questions, but if any of you have any questions, please raise your hand and we'll be glad to take them. Yes?
Hey, Peter, I'd like you to share with the group a little bit more of the integral activities you did at Puno School. Some of the famous surfers who were in your class, and how often they attended class on the days of North Shore.
Well, my favorite story involves Fred Hemmings. I've told this a lot, so maybe some people have heard it before, but Fred Hemmings was parking cars at night and then coming to school. He was, you know, he was not a very good math student. He was in my math class. In fact, he was a lousy student. But he fell asleep. And I told the class, I have a fairly loud voice, and usually when I'm teaching, the classes 3 rooms down can hear me, but I lowered my voice and said, we have to be very quiet. Alzheimer's moment here. Poor Fred, he needs his sleep. And Fred is kind of totally gone. And so I started teaching real quietly, and nobody learned any algebra. They were all giggling, and I'm trying to explain the polynomial squares and stuff like that. And he's still sleeping. And then he's sleeping right through it all, and then the next class comes in. I tell my class to go out very quietly, and I have the next class come in. And the next class comes in very quietly, and I go ahead and I keep it very quiet. Not much algebra was learned that day, but that class went through. The third class He's still sleeping. Finally, the third class, and by this time the whole school knew about it, so there were people sitting outside waiting to see what was going to happen. People weren't even in their own classes, you know. And we come in, I say, should we wake him up? And they say, yeah. We say, Hemmings, wake up! And he goes, oh my God, oh. He's really upset because he missed a test, and he did this, and he did... So that was a highlight of that, and that was one of the highlights of my teaching. But Paul Stroud was just a classic surfer. You know, people have their favorite surfers, but my favorite surfer at Sunset, the way he rode on this Pat Curran balsa strung board, fiberglass board, the way he rode Sunset with that board was just amazing. And Paul Stroud was a classic guy, but he was, he never looked like a surfer. You know, in the classroom, he always wore kind of nice clothes and everything, and he didn't really, he was very humble. He wasn't, I didn't even know he surfed, and I was out at Alamana Bowl, and I'm kind of nearsighted, and I paddled up, and I said, that looks like my student. And I'm looking at him, and I say, and then the next day I said, do you surf? And he says, yeah. He's smiling, you know. I said, was that you out at Alamana? And he said, yeah. And so that was my introduction to Paul Stroud. But I really think that we have a lot of fun, and Punahou was a great experience for me, and I've had a lot of fun teaching those guys, and I had Jerry Lopez, Jeff Ackman, Paul, John Clark, and a whole slew of them. Any other questions?